You know how some people get tattoos on purpose? The flowers, the dates, the cute little quotes. Well, my tattoos are all invisible. None of them were consented to. Before I get started, I do have a quick disclaimer. This episode contains family trauma, government incompetency. In the event that it sounds fake, I so wish it was. There were no drugs taken before the filming of this episode. There were no cork boards that were harmed in the making of it. If at any point you think there's no way all of this could have happened to one family, well, I wish that was true. Also, if you're feeling fragile today, you may wish to put on your 80s parachute pants, sing your favorite Bobby Brown song at the top of your lungs until the subscriber button shows up and force him to watch with you. Back to the show. There are moments, some families, there's a realization that the danger is not outside the home. It's a realizing that the system is aware of this, already knows, and is not coming. This episode isn't about one crime. It's about what happens after the truth is confirmed, and then it is quietly erased. Because the truth doesn't appear, families don't heal, they shatter. Dad was reported, not rumored, not suspected, reported. There was exams to prove what I was saying had happened. The cops sat with me and my mom and cried for a brief moment. And we thought the worst part was over. But then the report vanished, lost, not misplaced, gone. And when it disappeared, it didn't just vanish from a cabinet. It vanished from conversations, from phone calls, from eye contact. Adults stopped explaining, using tones that meant stop asking. You don't think in terms of corruption or cover-ups. You think of in terms of rules. And suddenly, it feels like the truth is a punishment for existing. And that was not my first invisible tattoo. There was no follow-ups. There was no charges. No explanations. Anyone would say out loud. Instead of Dad going to prison, he cut deals. He played both sides. He got the cops' money. He got the dealer's dope. And anyone else who was stupid enough to trust him. And he took all of that and he ran. That's when we stopped being a family and we became collateral damage. That's when things changed. There was dark tinted cars sitting on our corners. There was click, click, click sounds on the phone. The sound that even a child knows that it's an echo of someone else listening. Cops coming to the door asking, "Where is Ronnie?" And mom asking in return, "Why hasn't he been arrested for what he did to our children?" The cops' only answer was, "It's too late now." That's strange to hear as a kid, because you're still young enough to believe that adults can fix things. Too young to fill out a resume, but apparently old enough to clock in for overtime in trauma. One night, the entire family was almost by carbon dioxide. This was not an accident. This was an attempt. The kind you don't talk about because it sounds too much like a movie plot, and people stop listening the second it does. But that Wednesday, when we came home from church, and my mom was sitting on the couch laughing and crying and laughing and crying, and my stepdad going, "What is wrong with you?" And her just laughing with tears coming out of her eyes, saying she didn't know. One phone call to 911 took her away in an ambulance with no explanation as to what was wrong with her. Me, upset, wanting to go with my mom to find out what's wrong. My stepdad argued. I kept telling him that I felt like something was in my lungs, and he told me I was just making it up because I wanted to go with my mom. So then I noticed his youngest son, Brian, was laying on the ground. They were all asleep. He had thrown up and he was like drawing on the ground in his sleep. And I was like, "What's wrong with your son? We should go to my mom." And he's like arguing with me, "No." And went and scooped Brian up and is rocking him and telling me not to make fun of him. And he takes Brian to the master bedroom, tells me to go to sleep. And I'm still on the couch crying that I want to go to see my mom. And he just tells me, shut up and go to sleep. And I don't remember anything else after that until I am on the concrete with my head in a fireman's lap, oxygen on my face, and him talking to me, asking me what my name was. I was 13. And, sorry, I was 13. And it's being explained to me that my whole family got carbon monoxide poisoning, and we all almost died. And that the two youngest kids, which would be Brian and Justin, had went in an ambulance. There was only 2 ambulances in Cal City at the time. One was already on its way back from taking my mom, and the other one had just left with my 2 youngest stepbrothers. And the one that came back took the next 2 youngest, and then this continued. And Jack and I were the last ones to go. And I don't remember a whole lot except for sitting there on the concrete, freezing with my own throw up all over me, and them just trying to keep me awake to talk to me. I do remember getting to the hospital and them asking me questions about like who the president is to make sure my brain was okay. They had previously, before we were all coming in with carbon monoxide poisoning, told my mom she was crazy and gave her a card for a psychiatrist. They did, however, once they found out we had carbon monoxide poisoning, pull her back in, and she did have the highest levels. Later, they investigated what caused the carbon monoxide poisoning. Turned out that somebody had shoved rags down into our vents and then put leaves over them. And they had also stuck gas rags in the back of our oven. Had it not been Wednesday night, had it not been a night we go to church, we would have probably ate a meal. Our stove would have probably caught on fire, and we would not be here. And it's kind of a good thing that Jack refused to take us to the hospital, because had he not, we would have never known it was carbon monoxide poisoning, and we probably would have died anyways. We did get a call to be on Rescue 911 because they were so impressed that the whole family was saved. However, when Jack got up later and called 911, he called and he said, I feel like I'm demon possessed. And the operators said, I think you've been watching too much TV. And he said, whatever the hell I've been doing, you get somebody over here now. And he turned up the heater and laid next to it. When the fire department got there, no one answered, and they could see through the curtain that everyone was passed out and had thrown up. So they busted down the door and saved our lives. And that is not all that happened. There are many other things that happened. My mom had to go into the hospital for to have her kidney removed. Some very scary things happened to her there. It's still not clear what happened. But when she came home, she was not her. And without prayers, and I don't know that we would have got my mom back, because she was tormented in that hospital, which was located next to a prison in Lancaster, California. It is no longer open because my aunt wrote several letters to the governors, the mayors, demanding it shut down. So it no longer exists. However, while she was there, one of the things she's very clear about is that they were asking about my dad and where he was, and threatened all of our lives if she did not tell them where he was, which she didn't know. And in fact, we didn't know where my dad was, because when he would call and we would ask him, he would say, I'm 2 states away. Well, 2 states away from California, there's a couple of options there. So we had no idea where he was other than 2 states away. Every time he called, he never called long enough for them to trace the call, apparently. But anyways, after this happened, my dad did call us and ask if we were all okay. Apparently, he had gotten the message somehow that we had all almost died of carbon monoxide poisoning. And he told us that he had met somebody who looked just like him. It was canny how much he looked like him. That it was like looking in a mirror. And shortly after that, we got a call from Washington, Seattle, claiming my dad was in the hospital, unalived, from a OD. And they needed us to get his body. It was odd that they were divorced, and my mom was saying, I don't want to get his body. But they told her that she had to, that she had his kids, and she's the one that had to collect his body. His mother couldn't do it. So she did. She flew his body all the way from Seattle to Mojave. When the body got here, there was, at the time when my dad called and said that he met someone that looked just like him, we didn't realize he was telling us a code. And at the funeral, nothing lined up. His hands were too small. His mustache was too perfect. Birthmarks were missing. And even some family members said he was too shiny, that he looked like wax. No one actually believed it was him, not to mention the whispers of people seeing him. He had more sightings than Elvis and less impersonators. So the story always remained in our minds that our dad was still alive somehow, but we didn't know who was the good guys and who was the bad guys. Certainly it wasn't the cops, because he was supposed to testify apparently against 3 cops and an attorney. We found out their names. Pretty much all of them are gone now. However, he never did testify. So therefore he couldn't have been in Woodsack. So where is he? I don't know. He's probably gone now. The way he did drugs in his days, I'm pretty sure that he's not alive today. However, we still have tons of questions, more so than answers. But this is where my brother comes in. When truth disappears, people go looking for it. More notice things, details and patterns, faces where they didn't belong, and faces where they should have been but weren't. And part of him even believed that once he found Dad and he got some answers, that he could be at peace. I don't think he cared about protection. I think he was a lot like me. And as we were growing up, we had no fear that anything would ever happen to us. Not because we were so religious and God was protecting us, but because we felt that the pain that we already felt couldn't get any worse. Anyways, my brother was 16 and he was out on parole, and therefore he had to have a job and go to school. Well, he was cleaning a well-known drug dealer's house in California City, and there is where he froze when he looked up and he saw no shoes, cut-off jean shorts with the pockets hanging out the front, and no shirt, and looked at this man and said, "Dad?" And the man winked at him with a smile and said, "No, son, my name is Bill." When this story was later told to my uncle at his funeral, I watched the blood drain out of his face, and he turned white as a ghost. When pressing him to find out why, he later said, when any time your dad didn't want somebody to know his name, that is the name he gave. If that didn't send chills down my spine, I don't know what would send chills down anyone else's spine. But that's a little creepy. Because the only conversation that we had with Warren about this after this is that when he got out of jail, he was going to go find Dad. Unfortunately, he didn't make it out. He was there until he was 18. He had called my mom, and he talked to my mom and my sister. And my mom's like, "I'm coming up next weekend. I'm bringing you KFC," which is his favorite. He was all excited. He also wanted to meet my daughter, Linda, who had been only 3 months old. And so he was excited to get out, and he was excited to come home, and he was excited to start his mission of looking for my father, who he now knows, not suspicions, is alive. That would never happen. Because the very next morning, 2 men would arrive at my house to inform me that my brother had hung himself. In the suicide note that they gave us, it said that he was tired of having a criminal mind, and he was tired of being a peon. And I'm sorry, but this is 1996. And there is nobody, no teenager I know, running around thinking they're a peon. or even using that word. And then aside from that, I've never heard a criminal say they had a criminal mind, because they don't think that. They think the next time I'm going to do this and I'm not going to get caught. They don't think that they are tired of having a criminal mind. Not to mention that the letter was written like a 5-year-old had written it. And my brother was a perfectionist. He didn't even want eraser marks on his paper. I have seen him throw away 15 sheets of paper writing in pencil to somebody because he messed up on the writing, and he wrote in calligraphy all the time. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone who's ever been in jail's letters, but his was the typical "I'm in jail" letter that you would get with the stars, clown faces, all of it. This had none of that. And it said, "To whom it may concern." Secondly, we're trying to get answers from, or thirdly, we're trying to get answers from them, asking them, well, what happened? Apparently he was on 23-1, which means you're in your room for 23 hours and out for 1. And they had told him, or they had said that when they were doing a walkthrough, their hourly walkthrough, they had found him hanging, and they had took him down to do CPR, and he was unsavable. He was already gone. However, when the mortuary comes to the church with his body, before we go see it, they tell us there may be more makeup than you expect due to the trauma. And my mom is like, what trauma? When you hang yourself, there's no freaking trauma. So she pushes her way through the guy. We go in there and we look, and he had a chunk of hair missing out of his head. Both his eyes were black and blue. His nose was broke. We don't know if he was missing any teeth because they sewed his mouth shut. You could see a billy club indentation on his forehead. There was no marks on his neck at all. There was a handcuff welt on his right hand. His left hand was bruised, like he was punching with it. I unbuttoned his shirt. His whole chest was bruised. He was bruised everywhere except his neck. He had no markings at all on his neck. So my mom calls back up there, and they're refusing to talk to her, and we couldn't get no answers. And we're poor. We didn't really want to chase this because, we didn't know if it was related to my dad or not. And we didn't want any consequences of this. So pretty much, other than a few letters written to some senators and governors, nothing was done. And I don't mean to put on my conspiracy hat, but it's just convenient that my brother was arrested for a dirty piss test when my 10-year-old brother took the test. And we couldn't very well tell them that because then he failed the test. So, what do you do when he's being arrested on fake charges and they hold him for 2 years and he never makes it home? And all of this after seeing someone who looked like my dad, dressed like my dad, and spoke like my dad. A little too eerie. And that is where all that drama ends, because none of us pursued it. However, that didn't change certain things, such as every Thanksgiving and every Christmas, my family used to speak in firm tones about the JFK conspiracies. The grassy knolls, the second shooter, all of it. Anyways, but until the call came that my brother's gone, those dried up instantly. Not the conspiracies. Those just changed names. And all of a sudden, the DAW wasn't a government conspiracy. What it was shorthand for Dad and Ward. They may have had the round table, and we had the dinner table. It may not had as much money, but had just as much energy. Now, I am not a therapist, but I do play one on TV. But I'm going to tell you this. There are things that we live through that you don't as you're going through it, you don't recognize and you don't see how much it's affecting you. And it's not until you sit still. It's not until you're in your moment of peace that you see, my gosh, it's like when you're driving down the road and you aren't paying attention, or you take your eyes off the road, you pick up your phone, whatever it is, and you go in the other lane and you almost hit another car, but you don't. And you pull over on the side of the road and you're like, your heart's racing 100 miles an hour and you're like, I almost died. It's one of those moments. And it's unlike where you can just like, okay, just leave everything alone, get back on the road, go home. There's no safe place. There's no place to continue, because while all this was going on at home, I was bullied at school every single day by almost the entire school. Aside from that, I would go to church and my cousins would have their friends come to church and beat me up there. I had no safe places. It didn't happen all the time, but it happened a lot of times. And I had no safe place. And I would run away all the time. I would disappear for weeks and months at a time, with no fear that something was going to happen to me, because what more could happen to me? What little did I know that so much more could have happened. Little did I know I could have caused myself so much more pain than I already was in. But thank God that he was watching out for me and he was protecting me. Because when I was doing those running around, doing drugs to numb the pain and not think about things, lose track of time. When I was doing all of those things, God was protecting me, because that was in 1993 and 1994. And in those years, if you look it up, there was 2 truck drivers operating on Highway 14 and 58, which are the 2 highways I hitchhiked in those same years all the time, that were picking up girls that were hitchhiking, and they were raping them and spreading them over the Mojave Desert in pieces. And I have to thank God that I was not one of those girls. I do admit that there was one time I was picked up by a truck driver that gave me a weird feeling. Like he was just looking at me like, and I was like, I need off at the next stop. And I don't know if that was one of the drivers or not, but I'm just telling you that God had his hand out for me, and I have to thank him. He saved me more times than I know. And I think that it's important that you find in the middle of your chaos a place to sit and think about what's going on and focus on what you need to be focusing on, not the trauma, because that's the only way you can see it in hindsight and make clear decisions and responsible decisions. And again, I'm not a therapist, I just play one on TV. But I do know from experience that it's so hard when you have stuff like that going on to make real decisions. You think you are. You think you're level-headed, you're making good decisions, you're doing the right thing, what you need to be doing. And in reality, you're probably not. You're probably doing the opposite of what you need to be doing. Because while this is going on, you also have people gaslighting you. You have people telling you that what you're experiencing is not real, and that what your gut feels is not real. And so you are being trained to go against the feeling of your own gut feeling. And so when you're not doing that, it doesn't feel right. And so you're going against your gut feeling and making decisions that are completely wrong for you. At least that's my experience. And I don't want other people to be doing this in this time. And if it could be avoided, and if it's a life-changing or altering decision, don't make it in this time, because you're not in your right mind. You're not going to be able to clearly see things for the way they are. And I don't know what to say, but I don't want you to feel the chaos that you feel inside. And I understand what people are going through, and everything is not perfect and everything is not clear. But I'm still standing, and I am doing better than most people who have gone through any one of the things that I have gone through in my life. I'm just trying to, you guys have now just heard a small portion of what I went through as a child. This is just my childhood. Then there's a whole slew of things I did as a teenager to screw up my life. And then adult decisions I did to screw up my life. And yet, here I am, still standing, still trying to do the right thing, still trying to, I want to help you. I want to help you understand and see that even though we feel like we're thinking clearly, we think we see things clearly, there are things that are implanted in our brains from this trauma that are wrong, that we feel is right. And we can't see them because it's not something that's listed as A, B, and C comes with this. Yes, there are things that are like that, but there are things that are that aren't recognized yet, that aren't seen as an implant of a false belief because of a trauma. And I don't want to be your therapist, but I want to be the person who helps you see that maybe you need to talk to somebody else, a professional, and make sure that you are seeing things clearly, making clearer decisions, making the right path for yourself on real, clear beliefs and thoughts, not implanted trauma beliefs and thoughts. And with this being said, I hope that everybody has a happy Merry Christmas. My friend of 21 years, Echo, will be here with me in a live on Christmas Day. Not sure of the time yet, but we are going to be here. And I want to leave you with some happy moments. I remember, which is another way to refocus yourself. If you can't go physically do something to focus yourself, I suggest that you go to a place of happy moments. So I remember when I was younger, my mom worked at Shakey's. We would go to Shakey's and I would put my hair in my own ponytail. I was only like 2 or 3. My sister would have pigtails. She'd be running down the aisles, pulling her hair out. But I'd be running up to the jukebox. And my dad would lift me up to the jukebox and let me pick 3 songs. And every single time, I picked the same 3 songs. Put Another Dime in the Jukebox, Baby, I Love a Rainy Night, and We Will Rock You. And my dad would try to convince me not to pick different songs, but I wouldn't. I picked the same songs every time. And I almost can see the numbers like A3, J1. I mean, I don't know if those were the real numbers, but it feels real. But I know those are the songs I picked, and I picked them every single time. And that was nice. It made me feel like there was a routine. It gave me a safe place to go. And it even gave me power because it was my choice to listen to those 3 songs. And so I want to leave you with the jukebox rule, or what I call the jukebox rule. And when everything feels like it's out of control, don't try to fix the whole story. Pick 3 things: memories, routines, and situations. And that made you feel okay. Not necessarily healed, not necessarily happy, but okay. And it's not denying what you're going through right now. It's regulating yourself to having an okay moment in the middle of your chaos. And some families pass down recipes, some pass down traditions, ours pass down lots of questions. And those questions are the first makings of my story. So until next time, where I tell you a tribute to my brother Warren, with no theories, no shorthand, just a boy who got tattoos who never asked for them, because some tattoos show up on our skin and others show up in our soul. When the system fails, the people you love. And if this episode stirred something in you, I linked my page below, which has 219 resources for mental health, housing, food, clothes, even some job resources and financial aid. Do not be ashamed to use them. And if you see any that are in your town not listed, let me know so that no one falls through the cracks. Know that you're not alone going through your trauma. It may not be the same trauma. You may think your trauma is not as bad as somebody else's trauma, but your trauma is just as important as anyone else's. You're not alone. So final, I am Grandma B, and I'll be back to fight one more day with you.